Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Fabien Capello. Fabien's a designer based in Guadalajara, Mexico, and he is generously working with the Cranbrook Industrial Design students on a workshop to develop a collection of objetos de hojalata, or tin objects, which you'll learn more about momentarily. In January, Cranbrook ID will travel to Guadalajara to further develop the designs with the artisans there, and we are planning an exhibition in New York in May. Fabien, thank you so much for your time and all your hard work in helping us.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Fabien. Thank you for the introduction, Leon, and thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you also to all the students from the department with whom we've been working the last 2 days, really excitingly. I'm so happy that I'm sure that soon you will see the result of our collaboration. This is how I like to start my presentation. It's a picture I took a couple of years ago in front of my studio. I'm based in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And it says mirar con el corazón, which would translate like looking at things through your heart or with your heart. And it's a little bit the base of my methodology. It might sound weird for an industrial designer, no? But I really try to see the potential in things. I also I really believe that as designers, we're here to listen to things or to look at things, not so much to respond, but really to understand. And that's a little bit the attitude I try to have in my life as well. These pictures is actually quite deep for me, you know, because I've always been fascinated by lettering and graffiti, and that's really what brings me into maybe wanting to study art. And then at the end, I find this thing beautiful that my work is about intervening on something. It's never about creating something that exists in a white box or in a no context place that don't exist. It's really about using the context of what already is there and maybe adding a layer to it, maybe transforming it a little bit, maybe rearranging things. I talked about graffiti because that was really important when I was a teenager, and also I think it's kind of interesting, this idea of acting upon reality, no? And that's something I like to start with. I'm going to show you a couple of projects that I do in the studio. I would like to mention that, as everything in life, the design is a very communal practice. So my studio is composed of a few individuals that work with me. I would like to mention Mario Rodriguez Jaramillo, who has been working with me for 8 years as a designer. He's really involved in all the objects that we see here, but also Daniel Arias, who has been coordinating somehow everything we do at the studio. Oh, okay. For the last 2 years, and I'm really grateful, so I wanted to mention them. This is a project that I've done. I guess it's an interior design project. I think trying to categorize what is design is so limiting, no? I just say I do furniture design, industrial design, spatial design. I like to think about objects and spaces, and how they feel and how they work for us. This is a house I've designed for some very specific clients in Australia. This project has been completed in 2024, so that's quite recent. And through this project, I would like to talk a little bit more about maybe the idea of contracultura, or the counterculture, which I mentioned, maybe we think more about counterculture when we think about the music scene, but I think at the end it's really beautiful. I think culture is not a bad word, but that's what we learn, and somehow questioning what we learn and understanding what really is valuable for us today and how we live together is a really important thing that I try to keep in my mind. and for instance, questioning what is the look of a living room, no? What is the shape of a living room? Where do a family gather? Is that a series of big, massive furniture, or maybe is that almost like a space within the house where people can cohabit or co-live somehow? There is this platform at the center of the living room that is raised from the floor, and so it almost feels like maybe like a tatami, or like a really, like if the floor was upholstered. So you can use it. You can use the floor directly and every element of the house. The beauty about this project is that I really try to intervene or design everything. I did not design the house. That's very important to mention. When I got in the project, the house was already designed and was starting to be made. But I did intervene some of the texture of the wall around the house, like this painted wall that you see at the back. It's very important to mention that this house started around the art collection of my clients, and a couple of furniture that they had, like these tables and chairs designed by Sarin, and no, that's kind of very emotive for me to show this here. And then, so a lot of the interior work or the design work was to coordinate things and how they feel and look together. I also understand that things are mobile in a house now, and you want things to be open and things to change within time. I have designed all the lamps that you can see, whether it's the wall-mounted lamps at the very end or the pendant lamps above the table, also the candlesticks on top of the table. Also the wheelie tables, the marble table with the rollerblade wheels that can move from the living room to the sitting room that you have seen before. That's another view of the house. That's the terrace. It's actually, the reason why I decided to take on this project is that I really felt a proximity with the clients. They were telling me the house, it's actually not very big. It's around 140 meters square. I hope you can translate that into a unit that you can understand. And they wanted all the space to be used every day. There was nothing about the house that was for representation. It was all for them and for their kids. That's one of the big tables we placed outside. That's a technique I used a lot, which is a mosaic, glass mosaic. And I also designed the chair, the lamp that you can see up on the wall. That's the bedroom, the teenager bedroom. So we made, the bedrooms are really small. They're really beautifully proportioned. I think the architects, they did a really amazing job. But there is very little amount of furniture in the spaces. And I guess my role was to create elements that were functional enough, but also remarkable enough so that just a few things would be enough, no? That's the master bedroom, the headboards. We designed all the runners of the bed, also the bed covers for the teenager bedroom and for the parents. And then here, I think you can appreciate really what the work was about. It was really about coordinating also the art that they wanted to live with, together with the furniture and the interior of the house. Here you see more of the platforms that I've designed, either for sculpture or their collections of ceramics. Here on top of the wheelie table, there is the like a vase that I also designed that is part of a collection of objects that I will speak about later. But the idea is that those objects are really somehow simple to use. Every time I see pictures of the house, there is a computer in one of them, and it's close to the sitting room, or there is, they send me pictures of dinners that they have, and they use it to put like the pot of pasta on top. And that was the idea, that the furniture and everything could be used quite freely. The textile that you saw the big structure made of, it's actually like a very industrial weaving. It's a velvet, like a synthetical velvet, that is normally used in highly trafficked place where you need upholstery, like public transport. That's actually like bus seats, no? It can also be used, of course, in theater and cinemas. And And the pattern that you saw earlier was designed by me. That's another pattern that I have designed. And somehow, I love to generate patterns. That's something I'm really interested about, and I love to use them. I think all the time my pattern is trying to somehow generate complexity, within the shape that is being applied to, or throughout the shape that is being applied to. So generating volume into a flat surface. That was a little bit the idea with the blue pattern that you've seen in the house, and that's also the idea with this simple thing. It's called offset. You will understand why, with this sort of like patterning, like in the offset printing. Those are furniture that have been commissioned by the Denver Museum of Art for one of the museum space. It's a form taken from, it's an adaptation of the butaka, which is this really beautiful and history and shape typology of furniture that comes from Latin America, that has been used. Well, it actually is from the 17th century, but it had a comeback. It spread around Caribbean areas. It was mainly, it was not like a high society furniture, because you would imagine that the position is quite comfortable and your legs are like end up being quite high up when you sit on it. But then Luis Barragan, for instance, was one of the architects that started to use it in its interior, together with the help of Clara Porcet, who redefined the design of it somehow and the construction of it. I love to mention Clara Porcet, a Cuban designer that had all her career based in Mexico, and her husband, Xavier Guerrero. Together they won the second time, the second competition of cheap furniture from the MoMA. They're kind of not as visible as maybe the Eames and Saarinen, and I think it's nice. This selection of furniture, it really comes from their work on adapting it to modern use. That's the complete furniture inside the Denver Museum. So the profile has been sort of like elongated and patterned, also like somehow mix up your perception of the shapes. That's the pattern I used in the house in Australia. It hasn't been designed for the house in Australia. It has actually been designed for doing custom furniture for clients that I have. That's a small sofa we made for a couple of clients in Guadalajara. That's the view of the pattern. I was talking about counterculture. I love the idea that to redefine, like, what is this textile used for? It comes from a very public sort of usage, but I also believe it has great quality to be used in interiors, not in domestic interiors. But also, of course, it can be used in the entrance of the Denver Museum in the waiting area, and then everything can somehow relate. That's another mosaic table. You've seen one in Australia, in the project of Australia. I did not design the one of Australia. I designed it specifically in terms of sizes, but I would say that the type of object was already used in different projects that I have done for different clients. It's a little bit like the textile, somehow. It's this very simple, accessible, sort of like available technique that exists that is kind of overlooked. I really believe that if things exist and if techniques exist today, that's already very valuable, no? And I understand that a lot of designers try to push and maybe to work towards innovation. That's not so much my practice. My practice is a lot about understanding what is here and making the most of it. And then we go back to, of course, the idea of looking at things with your heart, no? So seeing the potentials of things as well. That's another one. The interesting, I think the most interesting thing for me about those tables is that they can really live outside. They resist the weather, intense weather, rain. So they, in a way, a little bit like they're quite heavy, of course, as you can imagine, looking at the volumes, but they're meant to remain, no? And I think there is a kind of like an architectural quality to it almost, in terms of temporality. That's all the tables that I have designed for specific clients. I think the first part of this presentation is really a lot of commission-based work. So those were commissioned for a house by the beach. They are being pictured in the house designed by Luis Barragan in Guadalajara. That's not where they live. They live in a house in Jalisco, but by the beach. I also designed those chairs that somehow are chairs that are meant to work together with the table. It's a really simple form. And then the pattern of those tables, they're based on games, like table games. So it was kind of beautiful, this idea that by the beach it's really difficult to have table games, especially the one made of cardboard, made of cardboards, of paper, or even wood, because of the condition, the weather condition. So somehow it was a response to those weather conditions that those tables could live outside and still have always the backgammon table or the chess game. You've seen also some of the glass lamp that I made for the house in Australia. Again, that's a technique I've been using since 2017 somehow. And again, it's the same kind of practice, you know. It's always this sort of like between industry and trade, very simple, straightforward practice or technique that doesn't involve a lot of tooling. That is really present also where I work in Guadalajara, where all of this work is being produced. And somehow, it's always about, also, for me, it's a lot about bringing this to a contemporary time and function, no? So there are those lamps. All of those are pictures in my studio, but all of those are commissions work, really. This is probably the first one I made. And then that's a really large sort of pendant that we made for a client. Okay. We're going to change a little bit the subject. Now we're going to talk about the reason why I'm here and the reason why Leon invited me. It's this sort of like branch of or arm of my practice that is based on one technique. The technique is this trade that is very, that is available and that is present in Guadalajara, although it's disappearing, which is this sort of like galvanized steel shape making for making vases and watering cans and simple objects around the house, no? I started to experiment and I started to work with some of the maker, I think back in 2020, and understood what I could do with the technique and what I could not do. I like to say that this chapter of the work that I'm going to show is called Extra Everyday or Cotidiano Radical, because that's so beautiful as a designer to imagine that you can act upon the everyday of someone, no? And at the end, I find so much value in that, also because we're not always looking for the exceptional, no? Sometimes the little details really make the difference, and there is something so, for me, so warm about the idea of everyday. I find that quite like it's a beautiful sensation in life, no? The quotidianity. So that's some of the objects that I have been developing with this technique since 2020, 2021. It's a sort of branch of my work in a way that it almost became like a fake brand. I say fake brand because it's not really a brand, but we do sell those objects to shops. We only sell to shops, so we only sell wholesale. They have quite an affordable sort of price as you buy them. And then, of course, because they're being shipped to the East Coast of the United States or the West Coast or even to Asia, I must say that this project I've found like a specific clientele in Asia. So most of our resellers are actually in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand. That has been a very strange thing for me, but that's also beautiful to think about and how people in different places that live in different material culture are attracted to the, different materials and different sensation, no, that an object gives. We've also done collaboration, so that's a collaboration that we've designed for Heath Ceramics that is available in the United States. This design is only for Heath, so we don't sell it through our other reseller. They're very simple objects. They're very close to what the technique allows to do. It's never about reinventing the wheel, it's always about trying to maybe create a language that makes the object both familiar, like with a feeling of everyday, and also maybe just like a little bit more contemporary, and that it belongs to our time, no? This is a picture that has been taken in a shop in London that has been one of our best allies for this project. It's called Jasper Morrison Shop. It's run by a prominent industrial designer, and that has really helped me and us in our team to make this project actually like a business that sustain our design practice. So I'd like to show this picture that is back in 2021. You've seen a few different images, and type of images of the Oralata, but that's also that's something that we decided since 2023, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, that we would only take analog pictures of the objects, and we would try to discard completely the idea of doing our catalog with digital images. So I've also been working with Great Image Maker, and that's been like a really nice sort of like side aspect of the project, to be able to develop an image for this brand that doesn't really exist as a brand. Those are images by Daniel Perram, who is an amazing photographer based in León, Guanajuato, in Mexico. And also you've seen images of Rodrigo Alvarez, who is a photographer based in Mexico City. So that's how so all the objects are really homey somehow. No? They're meant to exist in any sort of environment. They're not really meant to be show pieces. They're always kind of quiet in their quality and sizes. Oh, and I should mention, so that's the project. That's the Obretos de Hojalata project. And that's what I propose for the student to collaborate with this tool, this manufacturing tools, but also this brand. So the student of the industrial design department are designing objects that will hopefully be part of the collection, and we will show the first result in May in New York, probably as a shape of the exhibition will take a shape of a shop, but the idea is that maybe the best sellers or the most adapted object would actually incorporate the collection of objects, become part of the collection of objects. Yeah, I think the images speak for themselves. So the brand is actually, it's trying to not be too based on decorative items, and also propose like really sort of like straightforward, functional items for the house, like this paper bin, or like those buckets, the series of buckets that we have. It's a silly brand, and it's also like it's a non-commercial driven brand, which makes no sense because we have more than 50 items in the collection, and of course it's such a headache for us to manage all of this. But at the end, I really would love to the brand to be able to preserve some of the makings and some of the makers working in Guadalajara. That's definitely what motivated on the origin of the project, and also to really value the cultural aspect of like, what if a city could remain a place of production, no? What it means for a city, what it means for the city of Guadalajara. And then, you can push the thinking further. What if a city would actually generate all the objects that are being used and consumed, within its wall? So that's really at the end, they look like buckets and watering cans, but it's much more about this aspect. And then, of course, candlesticks. That's the house of Rodrigo Alvarez's grandfather, where we took part of the collection in picture. That's an exhibition. I love this picture. I would not remember the name of the photographer, but that's the Mack Center, the Schindler's House in West Hollywood in LA, where we were invited somehow to complement a show about Guadalajara-based architects. Architectural practice, and somehow the object lived within the exhibition as complementary, somehow. Also to talk about the material culture of Guadalajara. And that's a show I will talk about later on. But I like this image because in the exhibition we decided to have all the objects from the collection and also like images that somehow shown the process behind the making of the image in quite a pedagogical way. So we shown all the tools, all the accessory for the tools, and of course Arturo and Maria, you can't see Maria in these pictures, but who are the makers behind this project. And who we really teamed with. We teamed up with them to be able to create and generate this venture. Those are weird objects, but I kind of like the picture, so I show them. It's they're vases made of hojalata, but then they're brought to the car paint store next to where they are being made. And those were very limited edition pieces that we made for an auction, shot in my house. And also one new chapter from this collection of objects is that now all of the objects are available in brass, raw brass, absolutely the same making technique. We just thought that it was kind of interesting that people could choose the material of the object and that it wouldn't affect so much the design and the making process. So now some of the items are available also in brass. I love that somehow the brass shows even more the quality that there is given by the makings and the maker's hand. Okay, so that's somehow objects that I designed for my own project, but then I also design for clients. This is an outdoor chair that I've designed for a brand called Mexa, based in Guadalajara. It's a very simple chair. The idea was to create the most affordable and outdoor chair of their catalog. They're really good. I've designed another chair with them. They're really good at weaving, and they've really brought weaving to quite industrial pace of making. But to lower the price, I decided that this chair was not going to be woven and not going to use any woven element, but rather the soft material was going to be given by this recycled PVC that is extruded almost like a flat little band and then rolled over like if it was palm, like if you were weaving palm. And then it's just literally like rolled around the structure of the chairs, and it exists in the material. It's not palm. This is recycled PVC. That's a product that they also produce. They extrude this material, so it exists in natural color, which is pretty much like just a mix of all the colors that they have. It always comes out like between browny green, yellow, something, and then black. That's another project that I have designed for a company called Rad Furniture. It's a company based in Los Angeles, California. It's a very simple object. Let's say that Rad, they have like a very simple metal shop, and that's their main manufacturing tool, and they asked me, and they're really quite focused on doing exterior furniture. But they asked me to design a sofa that would be made within their metal workshop, they don't have a great amount of tooling. Somehow it's a really good old metal shop, and that's how they do things. So I created this series of furniture from 1-seater to 2-seaters to 3-seaters actually. That is this metal frame that almost like a basket would be able to receive cushions that we manufacture also in LA, that literally just blocks of foam cut with a wire, hot wire, and then upholster. It's completely based on the typologies of sofas that exist now, that has been designed by Charlotte Perriand inside of the studio of Le Corbusier. But then again, the idea was to try to make it really comfortable, which is not so much the case of the original design, I must say. Also, one of the things is that they're a small company, lots of their project is adapted onto others. So there was this idea that the fabric could be adapted to every kind of clients and interior design project that they do. From very colorful to quite toned colors. I think this one is the burgundy red, yeah? The 3-seaters. So you see, like, the idea was really to create an object that would adapt. Also, we're working on an outdoor version with a foam that resists intemperies, and foam and textile that resist intemperies. That's another iteration of this, but really we could pretty much use any kind of textile, and that's part of the charm and also I think of the motivation behind the project, that it didn't have to look like what I wanted to be like a valid object. No, we could also leave this part of freedom to any interior designer or clients specifying this object for their house. Those pictures have been taken by Ty Cole, who's an amazing photographer based in LA. This is in Schindler's designed house, also the Patrick's house. Okay. That's another outdoor furniture, also manufactured by Mexa. So the first chair that I shown you is by the same producer. It's sort of like really large, super comfortable, extra proportioned outdoor chair. The design is based on like each element. So really the idea was to create volumes out of the weaving, and that those volumes would become with the soft tension that the weaving is able to create when the body is pushed onto it, to create commodity, no? To create a feeling also like of unflat furniture, because I believe also like all the design that you can do with this technique, it's really flat all the time, no? And so there are those 3 surfaces. You can see the seating, the backrest, and the headrest that are meant to receive somehow the body. And then the rest is just a structure, the minimal structure to be able to hold it together. This is a salt and pepper grinder that I designed for a brand called Hem. I've been collaborating with this brand, a brand based in Sweden. Am I right? Yes, Stockholm, Sweden. I've been collaborating with them for quite a few years. We've been doing limited edition projects, limited edition product, and also long-running edition objects. It's kind of weird. It's a very simple object. The idea was to create those super sculptural items. They asked me to work with a company, with a manufacturing company based in Poland, who manufacture the Alexander Gerard little dolls that are edited by Vitra. So those guys are really good in like wood shaping, wood turning, and hand lacquering, no? So I decided to create those. They're quite simple volumes, but that are being complexified by the hand painting, no? And then So there was all this series of colors. It's actually probably, it's so weird to say that because it's a salt and pepper shaker, and I would love to design like metros and metro stations, but that's probably the product that I have designed that has been the most fabricated and sold. And then we did the black and white version, and then recently we also launched the plain wooden version, which somehow became my favorite one. I was kind of, at the beginning, I was like, no, the point is the painting. But then, weirdly enough, somehow the fact that the volumes are much clearer, somehow, with the wooden finishes, makes also the reading of the object somehow a little bit more accessible. That's another object I have designed for the same company. It's a series of lamps. I'm always trying, okay, so that's a series of lamps. It's based on the very traditional textile lampshade making. That's actually, at the base is a lampshade and the top is a lampshade. It's very subtle on the pictures, but the one on the left and the one on the right are not on, and the one in the center, the light is on. Maybe that's kind of subtle on the pictures, but the idea is that the light shines through the base and the top of the lamp in the same way. And of course, that the lamp is available in 5 fabrics, and the clients on the website can decide the composition of fabrics that he wants for the base and for the top. Apart from the smaller version that is 25 centimeters high, that only can be made in one textile. The medium and the large one, they can be made in a series of textile, and there is also like a patterned black and white stripy textile. I'm very excited to try to bring colorful product into the market. I'm also, and it sounds a bit silly to say that now, but I'm also very excited to always try to produce design that are somehow a little bit open for the customer to choose. I think there is such a beautiful feeling that someone takes home a product that he has been able to choose some of the finishes or some of the colors or some of the feeling at the end. I believe it can be a way to generate a relation that feels, like where there is a bit something about the human scale of consuming this kind of products that are made overseas and etc. That's the detailing. It's got a reflector that actually holds both parts together, and also it has a reflector on the top. Okay, so that's it for the product section. Now we're going to talk about the last chapter of the work that I want to show you. I'm aware of the time, but I think I'm doing good, which is much more about temporary space, or at least it's in between temporary space and public space. That's something I'm fascinated about. I call it collective joy. And that's really something I have in my mind. How do you generate space for people to use? And how do you generate space that are propitious for people to meet, talk, live together somehow? I'm fascinated by this idea. All of the images that you've seen, they're really strange projects, I think, to look at when you don't have the context, but they're all communal spaces for an art fair that is taking place in Mexico City. For 6 years, I was responsible for the design of the communal spaces for this art fair, working together with an architectural studio that was more in charge of the fair itself, and a graphic design studio, which was involved in the making of the general image. And also we were really like a creative team working together into understanding how we wanted the fair to work, no? This is one iteration of the fair that took place in Guadalajara. I think that's in 2022. We were still, all of us, affected by the global pandemic, so the communal space had to be outside. That was one of the first years. That's probably 2021, something like this. And we managed to get access to the 2 lines of traffic, one line to park the car and one line of traffic in front of the industrial warehouse where the fair was taking place. So this project took a lot of my time during 6 years, and it was a lot about adapting to the context. When I understood that we could generate the communal area outside, so it would also become like a really open space, the idea was that, it was more of a very fun fair than a very boring fair. So there was the idea that the public could be involved. It's also a fair that is free after Friday, so Saturday and Sunday. So the idea is that the public is involved and have access to the work of the galleries. So when we decided that we could use this outdoor space, it was very important to me. The traffic was not closed completely; it was only partially closed. Cars and trucks were still running through this street. So I wanted to generate a feeling of security, no? And sometimes. It's not only about feelings. I really wanted to be able to generate like a strong sign. So I decided to use those barrels, oil barrels, 200 liters barrels. And that's very interesting because in Guadalajara, a second-hand one, all of those are second-hand. It costs around $8. It's a lot of material, lots of steel, very structural for $8. So that was a great way to start to create furniture around this object. So we decided to add maybe surfaces that became benches, table. The tables were all of a sudden it became almost like a sign, no, for the fair. So the table were also inside in one of the eating area. The bench, like round benches around, that's a view of the fair. So what you see is actually like a booth of one of the art gallery. It took place in an industrial building that is a ceramic factory. So the kilns were left. Of course, they were not in use, but they were there. And all this andamio, like a structure made of scaffolding, that's really the work that the architect in charge of the fair developed. I also designed this super simple chair made of 2 bent wire. It's kind of like the minimum you can have. It's like a metal rod. Maybe I think it's. I don't know if it's half an inch or 3/4 of an inch now. I think it's. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not gonna say. And then metal mesh. It's the minimum material I think you can use to have a fairly comfortable chair. It's actually quite comfortable. This is something that is really dear to me. And then those chairs were used in the communal area, but also in the gallery spaces. And also with the barrels, we created those bars that were used for reception, here for the coffee place. That's another year of the fair. I'm going to show a lot of the years that we have been designing. But then the beautiful thing is that we were always managing to create some furniture every year, but we were also always reusing the furniture of the last year, and that became like a really beautiful design aspect, no, of this project. This year, we had a crazy sponsor that had a fiberglass company, so we could create those fiberglass surfaces that were used in various places around the fair, either as benches, or 2 together were used as table. So that's the the highest structure. No, it's like a table height. There are 2 together facing each other, and that becomes a table surface. And they were also used as console. I think there is no picture of the console, but you can see one behind the stage. So they were higher up, no, maybe 106 centimeters high. And they were used as a reception desk, also the technical console behind the stage for concerts. That's a little bit the kind of space we were trying to generate together with the graphic designers and the architects. They're more than just like art fair where people would go and buy art. They were really trying to be like temporary cultural temporary cultural spaces. There was concerts. Here you can see a concert of La Bruja de Texcoco with an amazing singer artist from Mexico City. I was always involved in the detailing and the finishing and fillings of the structure. So always working on the colors of the floors, the colors of the railings here made of tarp. And that's another year. You can see again those blue fiberglass surfaces furniture being reused together with the orange furniture from the year before in Guadalajara. And then we had this really weird industrial space. The point of this art fair is that it would always take place in strange places, no? That were being reused for the occasion temporarily. So, for instance, there was a big industrial bath or container that we had to kind of close off for security reason. So we created this square bench that runs around the container that I was mentioning. And so we were always adapting, to the space that was possible to use. And there is a very silly intervention here that somehow I'm really always happy about. It's that those sunshade, the green ones, they are directly planted into the floor. So because in this case, we could do whatever we wanted with the space. We did like a little, we cast a little volume of concrete under the floor, and it had a big tube coming out, and then the shade that also act as an umbrella for the rain would be directed onto the floor. No? So of course you would not be able to move them, but there was no space taken on the ground floor, on the ground level. That's a VIP area that we had to invent on the very last minutes. You can see the scale of the fair at the back of the images. There was a sponsor that arrived maybe like 2 weeks before the fair opened up. It was Art Review, this magazine, and so somehow all of a sudden we had to create another space that was the reading room for the Art Review. And I decided I went to buy like 4 secondhand. Of course, 2 weeks before the fair, all the budgets were closed off. We had manufactured everything. We were ready for installing. So I went to buy 4 vintage sofa and a few meters of this textile that we didn't even sew together, but that we just like wrapped them inside, like if they're a little bit like sweet wrappers, no? We're back in time. I think the last picture was 2022. I think we're back in 2017. 2018 maybe, where it took place in this very beautiful Art Deco building in Mexico City, always trying to take as much as possible the furniture out in the streets so that it would not only belong to the fair, but almost become like a generous thing that the fair could propose to general public. And then it has the umbrella. We made them with the graphic designer in charge of the identity of the fair. I really love umbrellas, sun umbrella. I think because they're like objects. They're an object, no one would agree, but they're also like architecture somehow. For this year, there was a very beautiful specific project that there was the entrance of the fair was this cantina, the restaurant, bar, accessible to the public, completely temporary. That's normally like a concert venue. So we created a few walls, and we used this yellow plastic chair, which is really available product in Mexico. I borrowed tables from an existing cantina that happened to have 70 tables in their storage. They had the same in their actual space. So it was really beautiful. I don't think many people recognize them, but for me it was really beautiful that somehow it also talked about the other cantina that exists. And then, I mean, it's really silly, but we really did like there was a textile tablecloth. And then the menu was printed on paper, and then there was a plastic tablecloth. And of course, that was really helpful for operation. It's not an expensive restaurant. It's not an expensive bar. On the contrary, it's quite accessible. So we really had to think about operation in terms of usefulness, and practicity. That's another view of the restaurant. I know a lot of people would question, like, why would this guy show us pictures of this cantina? But for me, that's exactly my work, you know, generating space, generating feeling, generating places where people, that function for people to use. That's the same year, so that was a concert venue, but we were building this 3-story scaffolding structure. And then in this case, I decided to create all the furniture, maybe that's a good image to talk about that, all the furniture out of the MDF of the scaffolding structure from the year before. That was 15 millimeters, and that proved that was not enough. So we had to upgrade all the floors of the scaffolding scaffolding structures. So somehow I got given like 300 boards of MDF, entire sheets that were used the year before as flooring, and that we used as the main resource for generating the furniture. This is actually just one piece of furniture. So there is like a 16 or 17 meters long bench that you can see on one side. And then it turns into this stage where the performer is playing saxophone that also has a wall with a screen. Here you see it's the same space but used as a conference. And then behind those walls there is all those booths, a little bit like a diner. The beautiful thing that we managed to do, because it was just one long line of furniture this year, we put electricity everywhere. And then what we really understood is that people were starting to work, recharge their phone. Most of the people are traveling to Mexico City for this fair. They're spending a couple of hours before heading somewhere. So it was really like, it became like really useful, no, to have electricity next to the furniture. There was also blocks. Here you can see them, like sort of like stool that could be used on either side. Oh, I forgot to mention, we had an amazing supplier that we would always work with for the fair. That was the person, the company that would provide the floor, the finishing of the floor, which was an industrial carpet used in fairs and convention centers, and it's really like nasty somehow material. But then this year we asked them, they would always work on site with quite a speed and quite an amazing technique. So this year we also asked them to cover all the MDF furniture with the same material. So somehow, and this is what I quite like about this picture, it feels like the furniture completely disappeared, no? And then there's only the people left. Okay, I'm going to change subject. That was Material Art Fair. I designed material from 2017 to 2022. So that's 2023. That's this picture has been taken in 2024. That's a show I had in a cultural center in the south of France called La Villa Noailles, which is this beautiful modernist building that organized design exhibition. And one of them, well, you know, you get a brief when you exhibit there. It's like you really have to show somehow the vision behind your work and the extension of your practice. And, you know, it's a lot about communicating about yourself, which is kind of a weird topic, no? And they have very impressive spaces that you can use for exhibition. And what I decided to do is that I sent some of the rolls of the industrial textile that you have seen earlier in the presentation. I sent it over. That was really interesting because that represented a fraction of the budget, because we could send them wrapped in plastic bags with FedEx, and it was actually really not so expensive. I really didn't want to do a show in Guadalajara and ship it to France, because this would have cost so much. And then back in France, you know, I went there, bought some furniture, put in the WhatsApp group of the cultural center, hey, to all the staff, hey, do you have furniture that you want to have reupholster? And also we asked that to the WhatsApp group of the neighbors, hey guys, we're reupholstering some furniture, do you guys have any furniture that we can use? And then quite a few people apply. They didn't know they were not going to have their furniture with them for 2 months. But what we did is we contracted a young apprentice and we reupholstered everything in the workshop of the cultural center. So it's really about, you know, like this project is really about understanding also the resource that one have to do those projects. There was an amazing sponsor that was part of the project, which could print carpets. So this is actually an image of the material art fair, communal spaces that I designed, and somehow the carpets were printed with images of projects that I could not bring to this exhibition. No, for the students that we've been working with, so at the back there is an image of the exhibition in Brussels. This carpet is an image of a series of research that I have done about street furniture or street furniture found in the street. What has been sent from the studio, but didn't require any manufacturing, is that all the lamps that you see hanging and on the floor and on the walls were actually projects that I had. They were all prototypes in good shape enough to be shown. So that was sent. And also what we sent was this series of mosaic boards, mosaic surfaces, that all of those are actually remnants, offcuts of when we did the big tables that you have seen at the beginning of my presentation. So I didn't really decide on the shape of the material which is underneath, which is aluminum, like alucobond, like an aluminum core plastic material. So we somehow we took the exhibition as a pretext to reuse all the materials that we had and somehow almost like empty my warehouse, no, where I store most of the objects I have. Those wooden crates were made in the workshops of the cultural center directly. And we asked him to provide us with a couple of lamps. There was a few hojalata objects around, some prototypes, some planters prototypes that we had and we also shipped. But at the end, the shipping was quite small compared to the size of the exhibition. That's the same exhibition, that's another room. All of those are patterns that I have designed either to be printed, to be executed in mosaic, or to be woven. And somehow I picked up in this collection of patterns and created those super like blown up scale patterns based on the original one that all existed in different projects. For instance, the blue and yellow stripes is definitely like taken from the salt and pepper grinder. On the stripy one on the right-hand side, it's the offcut textile. The blue is the one, the textile used in the Australian project, etc. They were blown up. We had a partner of the exhibition. We had a sponsor that could sponsor us with a printing wallpaper, really beautiful quality wallpaper. So I made the most of this, and we printed huge panels of textiles. The idea was to really interfere with the space and generate a space with just the thinnest materiality possible, no? Like how a paper can affect your, like really 1 millimeter paper stuck on the wall can affect the perception of the space. The marquetry of floors on the bottom is literally just industrial event carpeting. It's like the cheapest material you can get access of. And it was just cut into different squares and rectangles to create this like this sort of like sensation that plays with the space, no? On this side of the image, so that's the right-hand side for you, you see the safety exit of this room. So, you know, like the architecture really sort of like disappear I'm always interested by this phenomenon. No? I think colors and patterns are actually very functional in the way you can think about generating a space. For instance, I'm pretty sure that if you paint a bedroom in your house yellow, it will become the yellow bedroom. And so that's how interesting is it that a really thin layer of paint can define as up to giving it, like defining the name of a space, no? And then that's my third intervention in this cultural center. It's a series of seating that were placed inside on top of the terraces of the cultural center. It's almost the last project. I'm going to be really quick. It's actually a reference, of course, to the material communal spaces that I have designed, and also a reference to a practice that I have been doing in Guadalajara, really much like an activist, where I propose to all of my friends to remove the car space in front of their house and create those like really condensed public space that can be used, like by everyone. That's the most successful one. I know the students will come to Guadalajara. There are 3 that we can visit. There are illegal intervention, and it's okay. So I wanted somehow to, talk about those projects, but we did the Mediterranean version somehow, no, like the sort of like deck chair version to enjoy the view from the terraces. That's a little bit the construction. Of course, all of those were made directly next to the cultural center in the house. That's a picture of the streets in Guadalajara taken last week. And then the last project I'm going to talk about, and I think there is 5 slides, so we're almost there. It's a public space that I designed for a cultural center in Mexico City back in 2022. And then when this client approached me, they mentioned, so it's a reuse of this building. It used to be like a event venue where you could rent for weddings and like family parties and things like this. But it was converted into a cultural space by a series, like an organization of different galleries that are based in Mexico. It's so each of them somehow put the money for this space to run. They have really amazing, beautiful, big shows with really talented international artists. It's completely free, and I did this project 1 year after they opened it, and they really had a huge success, especially through TikTok to the younger generation and audience. So when they approached me, they told me we have 120,000 visitors every 6 months, and I was like, wow, I really want to do something there. And then there was this motor lobby. So this was a roundabout that when there was events, especially before the cultural space, the car could get into it. The green and yellow structure were existing, and they had this nasty super 90s glass panels sort of roofing, and well-dressed people could get out and go into the building. So the first action I did is that I created those big gates that have the name of the cultural center, which is called Lago Algo. And then those gates somehow, they spin onto a centered axis, so they never leave enough space for cars to get in. And I really like this picture because you could still see the hand-painted arrows to inform about the direction of the cars getting in and out, no? So the car was gone. And then we could generate different elements of furniture. Some of them use the barrels to brought more greenery to the space. The barrel is really an amazing material. Now, if you think about it, $8, the ability to receive and to be transformed into a huge planter. It weighs maybe when it's filled up 300 kilos. It's super structural for the space that it takes. So we did those really large picnic tables / planters. There is some permanent intervention. I mean, permanent. Nothing has been affected. It's just like brickworks and cement benches. There is a very long one where you're able to place different sunbrella or umbrella, sunshades. And then the one at the back is round. It's the size, it's the height of a seat, of a bench, but it could also become like a platform for speech at the opening ceremony of an exhibition in the cultural center. Or I also thought it could be used as a plinth, actually, for public artwork. At the end, it really became all of this and much more. Also becomes like a game for kids during the weekend. Here you can see the gates. We added some roofing. We removed some of the roofs and we added some roofing, but we used this plastic stripy material, corrugated material. We reused a lot of the structure. There is a structure behind. That's also a reuse of the structure, but we painted and changed the surface. And then what we did on the green, here you can see the roofs. We added like everything like if it was going to be as temporary as possible. So everything is really thin. It looks much more like furniture everywhere than actually like architectural interventions. One of the things that we've done to this side of the structure is that every 70 centimeters, we welded a hook at the bottom of the beams of the structure. And then, as you can see, we hung planters, I'm like swings, I guess you call them. Also, like games for kids. There was a couple of ropes that you could climb as a kid. And on this picture, there is quite a few hammocks as well. There is one at the lower part of the image, one in the center. We also created these networks of metallic wire that has the purpose of the vegetation from the hanging planter for them to grow on top of it. So it was really about reusing the quality of the space and making the most of this. And that's the last image of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I know it's a bit late, but I would love if you have questions or comments. I would love to hear them. If you're shy, that can also be an email. Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming. I was curious, like you were talking about the Swedish products that you made that were like kitchen tools, and you were saying, if I could, I would be designing transportation centers. And so I'm so curious, like if that makes it into your product-focused work. Do you think about transportation departments like when you're making other stuff?
No, I said that because what I aspire more about is like my work to be really spread, and available. I love this idea that people could live with some of the ideas that I have or some of the questions that I propose to have together. So I just thought like public transport is like the most shared aspect or items about our material world. That's why but it's true that my passion for the material world really come from I grew up in Paris, in the suburbs of Paris, and my dad was working in the metro system, as well as my uncle and my auntie, and as well as today my brother and his wife. So it's true that I have a really big relation with this, and I've always been really fascinated. I think my passion for a chair comes more from a public chair and a public bench in the metro than from the history of fine dining chairs. So that's why I mentioned this a little bit silly, but yeah. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, at the very end.
Hey, what's up? I noticed you used a lot of plants in a lot of different projects that you've worked on. Is that something that you kind of planned ahead of time, or is that something that sort of unveiled itself to you over time, that you enjoy using plants or incorporating them?
What a beautiful question. Thank you. I had never thought about that, but I think I have an answer that is building up inside my heart. No, I think as designer, we more than planning on things, we can rather plan situation for things to happen. No, and just give opportunity for things to happen. So, for instance, if you want to define a space, yeah, of course you can build a roof, but also you can plant a tree, no? And that's a really beautiful and much more interesting way to, if you want just to define a place or create shades to do things. Of course, also I have the immense privilege to live in a very beautiful tropical country, and I think my passion for plants or botanical questions really comes from also like having lived 10 years now in Mexico, I believe. Like imagine this picture without the object, just without the blue object, no? That would still look kind of cool, but then imagine it without the plants. And at the end of the day, the reason for the plants to be able to be there is because there is those planters, no? So it's really beautiful to think as a designer. Maybe we don't design the plants, but we design the planter, and that's what's allowed, you know, like nature and shade, and that makes everything more accessible for humans, no? To be around. Cool. Any more questions? Yay!
I was curious, like, what the role of like the local or location plays, because I saw that, like, I have lived in Australia and I saw that the pattern that you used in that chair was actually very much based on the public transportation there. And so I was curious, I could keep going back to the public transportation, but I'm just really curious if like, like how that's coming through for you, the local and location.
Well, thank you for your question. Thank you so much. I don't really know how to start, but I really believe my practice is acting upon an existing context. And what kind of context can you understand more or better than the one you live in, no? And what's being expressed by it, and what's being produced by it, and how it works, and how people live in it. So I think, yeah, the locality has always been like really the key or the center of all my practice, and I sometimes aspire as being an industrial designer that design a chair for a big company, but it will always start with very local, if it's not material, at least observations, no? So I think it's where I am is really the center point of everything that has been done and that I do. Thank you so much for all your questions. That's super heartwarming.
Thank you for your time and your talk. Can you talk a little more about the 10 objects that you're working, those are, I assume those are 10, or those?
This one.
Those, yeah. Can you talk about the history of the region and the background, and also how it inspired you? Because if I recall, 10 was used a lot in the United States until plastic, if I'm correct, right?
Mm-hmm, probably. That's a super interesting question. I think we could speak a lot about that. In the morning, I shown the students with an investigation project that I have done and published that really was the starting point of this collection of objects. And then I forgot to mention something which I want to bring now, which is really interesting, is that in Mexico, there are amazing craft and artisan museum, no, all across the country. And I think that's really valuable. And most of them collect a lot of the material culture about Mexico. None of them collect tin objects. Like if it wasn't, so you know, it's interesting that it's not considered as a craft to be collected as a craft or to be kept as a living craft, and it's also not considered as an industry because also it's, let's be honest, it's actually quite, it's dying. I'm pretty sure that there will not be any workshops in, I would say 20 years, but I think maybe 10 years will be gone. I started this project mapping all the workshops that I could find in the metropolitan area of Guadalajara. It was really interesting as a map because they were all somehow related to a place, whether it's a market, whether it's a cemetery. A lot of them, most of the oldest workshops, they're around the old cemetery in the center, no? Also the flower markets, there was a few around that. So that was an interesting map. Out of the workshops that I mapped, I would say that maybe 30% have closed today, so in 5 years. All of them are run by over 60 years old men, except from the one we're teaming up with, Arturo and Maria. They are both in their 40s. And they're kind of an exception because they're not even from Guadalajara. They both arrived in Guadalajara to work with hojalata makers, and then eventually created their workshops. That's also the only workshop that is not around the cemetery, that is not around the flower market, and that is not around the other cemetery where most of them are. There are a few places where you find this trade in Mexico. It's really quite remarkable how understandable it is. There is a center for production in Estado de Mexico, which is a state around Mexico City. It's a really big industrial, sort of like suburban, really urbanized state around Mexico City. And then another center of production is in León, Guanajuato. And the third one is Guadalajara. It's very impressive that you can, if anywhere you go in the country, if you go to a market, you can see some of those objects. It's quite understandable where they come from. They're all from those 3 points. I must mention that a lot of the hojalata also has a use in Oaxaca, which is another state down in the south, but it's much more like a decorative use, no? Maybe you know the enameled paint, like picture framed, that is really like more like a decorative or touristic present, no? Or souvenirs. So that's of course, that's a technique that came with the colony, with the conquest of the Spanish, but that had a really big impact in Mexico, and knowing that the Mexicas and all the other civilization living in Mexico at the time were so good with metals. So it probably had a really great sort of like resonance when it arrived. It's never been collected, so it's really difficult to find. It's also quite a modern technique today, no? And it's very difficult to find vintage pieces because, you know, after maybe like 80, 100 years, it starts to rust and people throw them away. So it's kind of hard to trace a history of it, also because it's not being collected by museum to be preserved. But yeah, does that answer a little bit around your question?
I love how you're taking that concept and just, because they tend to be the same forms everywhere, and you're changing them and twisting them and making their own forms, almost reinvigorating the whole form of what you think of. So it's really their love.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Great. Are we good to go? Thank you so much, really, for assisting and sharing with me. Thank you.